From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxton Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Thank you. Okay, board to reconvene. Good afternoon, Madam Clerk and colleagues. Would you please call the roll?
Supervisor Gleason. Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here, thank you very much. County Counsel, Ms. Raison, would you please help us with a report on actions taken in closed session?
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. This morning, or this afternoon, you met, item 57 was withdrawn. You met in closed session on items 58, 59, 60, and 61. However, there is no reportable action at this time.
Thank you very much. I do want to let the public know that we had an opportunity to discuss the BHC contract issue in closed session. I think it was a productive conversation. We all learned some things that we didn't know that are emerging out of the Public Health Department. So I'd like to ask anyone who is concerned about this issue to please direct your questions to Mr. Constantine at the Health Department. As it appears, they have a plan and are moving on it, and it would be more appropriately discussed in that fashion. I am, of course, always available and will be keeping a close eye on this matter, as will Supervisor Couch, of course, and he and I are also in communications. So thank you for that. As mentioned during our 9 o'clock board session, the County of Kern provided notice that as a result of the declared federal, state, and local emergencies due to the COVID-19 pandemic and in light of the governor's order, this Board of Supervisors meeting is not physically open to the public. Testimony and general public comment can be given through email or telephone to the clerk of the board prior to today's meeting. We will begin by considering the consent agenda. All items listed with a CA are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion if no member of the board or public wishes to comment or ask questions. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken on consent. A member of the board may remove any item from consent, and it will be considered in its listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. A member of the public may also comment on any closed session items. Okay, we're going to start with our consent items on page 2. They include items 3 through 6. On page 3, items 7 through 10. Page 4, items 11 through 16. Page 5, items 17 through 23. Page 6, items 24 through 28. Page 7, items 33 through 36. Page 8, items 37 through 43. Page 9, items 44 through 49. And finally, on page 10, items 50 through 58. Madam Clerk, do we have public comment regarding consent items?
Madam Chair and members of the board, I did receive one email. The writer requested that I read this into the record regarding item 3. It's a planning item on consent. And I would like to ask Mr. Gleason before I begin, is Ms. Williams' name Karen or Corrine? Karen, thank you. This is an email from Karen Williams, volunteer treasurer with Lake Isabella. She said, I personally want to extend the gratitude of every member of the volunteer committee who worked for 5 years to raise the funds to build a skate park in Lake Isabella. Had it not been for Supervisor Gleason, this project would have never happened. The Community Development Block Grant provides the additional funds necessary to make this skate park a reality. The youth of the Kern River Valley have been promised a skate park for decades, and they will finally have a place to enjoy their sport without getting into trouble. Thanks to everyone with Kern County who worked on our behalf.
Supervisor Gleason, your thoughts?
Very nice. I don't pay her enough. I didn't pay her more money.
Yeah. Is your mic on, Mick? I did. Okay. Yeah, probably good call there. I'm not surprised at Mick's investment and contribution into that community, and how nice to hear a thank you every once in a while. Mick? So nice work there. Madam Clerk, where are we?
We're ready to vote on the consent agenda. With
Okay,
a motion
fabulous.
And a second.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Excellent. Thank you, colleagues.
I need to do a roll call vote.
Please.
Okay. Supervisor Gleason? Supervisor Scrivener?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard?
Aye.
Supervisor Couch?
Yes.
And Supervisor Perez?
Yes, thank you.
Motion approved, all ayes.
Okay, very good. So we are going to move right along to public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on matters that are within the jurisdiction of the Kern County Board of Supervisors but are not on today's specific agenda, might be in the future if you are compelling enough, I presume. So any members of the public, Kathy?
Yes, you received 2 emails via email, and you also have them in front of you regarding support to contract with Building Healthy Communities. We also have 2 callers on the line. We'll start with Ms. Havreen Carr. Ms. Carr, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you have 2 minutes to address the board.
Hi, can I be heard?
Yes, you can. Good afternoon and welcome.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me, dear Kern County Board and Supervisors. My name is Harveen Kaur, and I'm the Kern County Community Organizer for Jakata Movement. We're a grassroots local organization that focuses on empowering and engaging the Punjabi Sikh community locally and statewide. We have deep-rooted ties with the community and constantly are pushing the outreach for resources we may need. And in light of COVID-19, many members of our Kern County community, or more specifically the Sikh community, have suffered. With the number of cases of COVID-19 on the rise in our county, as highlighted by Mark Constantine this morning, it is imperative you all prioritize the health and safety of your constituents by entrusting those who are already engaged and trusted by the community, like Jakata Movement and many other organizations. This is just purely a matter of public health and safety, and I look forward to working with you all in the future and engaging with the Sikh community and hopefully creating that bridge between us too. So I urge you all and I yield my time. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Madam Chair and members of the board, the other caller who registered did not call in, so that concludes public comment.
Okay, very good. Public presentations. We'll do board and then I'll do 2A. Thank you. We are going to do our fire contracts issue under 2A, so we're going to get to that right after board member announcements. Gentlemen? Supervisor Couch, any announcements from you?
No, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I know there's a delay there, but thank you. Board member announcements for us. Okay, we're going to take up item 2A. We continued it from this morning because we had a lengthy morning, and Mick was so hungry, so we went ahead and took a little break, and we're ready to hear this complicated and critical matter for Kern County. It is item number 2A, and it is the fire contracts issue. Let's see. You're all teed up and ready to go. Very good. Oh, back to our CAO, Ryan.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. Floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board. And I want to point out that we've got 8 members of our fire department here, our fire chief, our fire marshal, all of his executive team and administration. I appreciate the support today for that. In December of 2017, the Center for Public Safety Management issued your Board of Supervisors commissioned operational and administrative analysis report on the Kern County Fire Department. This was a top-to-bottom critical analysis of Kern County Fire's operations, finances, purchasing, and contracts. The CPSM analysis itself, along with its findings, was discussed publicly on numerous occasions. It was widely discussed and reported on by the Kern County media. The report provided 62 different recommendations that the study's authors, including current and former fire chiefs and city administrators, suggested be implemented to address critical fire operational and financial needs for the department. All 62 recommendations in this report are based on best practices derived from the National Fire Protection Association, the Center for Public Safety Management, the International City Management Association, the U.S. Fire Administration, the International Association of Emergency Managers, and the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA. Many of these recommendations have been achieved, and many remain a work in progress. And I'd like to thank Chief Witt, and I know your board does as well, in working toward many of the efficiency gains he's making in his department. Among the 62 recommendations was the explicit advisory that Kern County modify its fee structure for cities that obtain services from the Kern County Fire Department so that the contract costs reflect the actual cost for providing these services. According to the 27th CPSM analysis, and I quote, "The current population-based methodology is resulting in less than 100% cost recovery for services while workload is predominantly in these municipal contract areas. CPSM believes that Kern County should revisit its current contract fee structure for contract municipalities and devise a new methodology that is more aligned with the actual cost of providing these services." Last year, the county retained the services of the Nadelson-Dale Group to conduct a review of the municipal contract services provided in incorporated cities by the Kern County Fire Department, in which they established that the Kern County Fire Department's existing cost allocation methodology yields contract charges that are significantly less than the actual costs of providing fire protection and emergency medical services to those contract jurisdictions, which is in line with the same recommendations from your board's commissioned Center for Public Safety Management study that was done in 2017. The fire department's current cost allocation methodology results in an underpayment, according to the Nadelson-Dale Group, of over $10 million annually for services rendered in these 9 incorporated cities. To address this, the Nadelson-Dale Group analyzed potential revisions to the county's methodology for allocating costs to the 9 cities Kern County Fire contracts with for services. And based on these cost recovery policies for fire protection services, on methodologies implemented in practice in other counties and fire districts around the state. So it was based on several different methodologies that are put into place and implemented across the state. They concluded that Kern County should structure fire contracts based on the actual direct costs. These are things like facilities, staff, equipment, and services, and indirect costs of operating each city's dedicated fire station. 90 days ago, we came before your board with a recommendation as a courtesy to these 9 cities. Your board asked us to take a pause and to speak with them and have a dialogue with them, which we have done for the last 90 days. We are back per your direction today with this item. And with that, I do want to hand it, even though I've said a little bit here, I want to hand it over to Mr. Zerfus of my office, who's been personally handling the back and forth and work with the cities, and he has a more detailed PowerPoint presentation I'd like him to go through.
Thank you, Ryan. Madam Chair and members of the Board of Supervisors, this is a review of the issue here regarding municipal fire service contracts. As an introduction or reminder of where we're at, the Kern County contracts for fire services with 9 incorporated cities, and that are all of the incorporated cities in Kern County except for California City and the city of Bakersfield, who have their own fire departments. Those 9 contracts, seven of them expire June 30th, 2022. One of them expires in 2032, 10 years later, and one of them expires December 31st of this year. As pointed out, these contracts are not structured to reimburse the county for the full cost of services. They, in fact, are doing significantly less than that. The current contract revenues account for roughly $4.19 million of revenue. That includes a combination of fire fund property tax received and actual payments from those incorporated cities. The full cost recovery, according to the Nadelson-Dale Group study, which is the most recent study on this matter, calculates that at roughly $14.54 million. So there's about a $10.3 million per year shortfall between the cost of providing these contract fire services and the amount of revenue that the county is receiving to provide those services. The biggest issue that is contributing to that shortfall in the existing methodology, there is a kind of a double discount in how they allocate per capita fire costs. There's a per capita allocation that is then discounted again based on staffing ratios of staff in incorporated cities versus county-wide fire department staffing. So there's effectively a kind of a double discount that gets applied there that's really the root cause here for that shortfall. Looking back at how we got to this point, in 2018, January 9th of 2018, your board received that CPSM study, as Mr. Alsop had referenced. It included 62 different recommendations to improve the financial and operational situation for the Kern County Fire Department. One of those included moving to 100% cost recovery for these municipal fire contracts. It is estimated at that time that reimbursement rate was about 48%, so a little less than half of the cost. As a result, your board engaged the Nadelson Dale Group to study this issue and to bring back additional recommendations on how to move forward in that vein. June 30th, 2020, so about 4 or 5 months ago, that TNDG study was presented to your board. It found that the existing cost recovery was roughly 19%, so a little bit less than the 48% found by CPSM. It identified the limiting factors in the existing contracts that caused those issues, and it recommended some methodology for full cost recovery and a way to get there with a 7-year phase-in period. A representative from the Nadelson Dale Group and county staff presented that to your board. That matter was continued until July 28th. On July 28th, that matter was again discussed before your board, and in meeting the city's request, the contract city's request for additional time to conduct a substantive review of the Nadelson Dale Group study, your board continued this matter for an additional 90 days in order to allow them to do that, which is the amount of time that they had requested in order to take up that matter. Between June 30th and today, there's been a lot of communication and work that's gone on. The staff here at the county, as well as representatives from the Nadelson Dale Group, and I should say across the county, including the CAO's office, the fire department, the auditor controller's office, everyone that had information that was needed, engaged in meetings with the city's consultants. We had initially scheduled individual meetings with every impacted city. Those were subsequently canceled by the cities, and we were directed to meet with the city's consultant that they hired on this matter, a consulting firm called Citygate. We did that. We met with them online more than once. We followed up with various document and data productions. We had phone calls and emails in working with Citygate in their engagement. And it's my understanding that their work concluded at the end of September, that their work was completed. In addition to that, we reached out and met with the cities. We had in-person meetings with the cities of Taft and Tehachapi, including the fire department and the CAO's office, as well as in-person meetings with all represented cities here, including the CAO's office and Kern County Fire Department. So we had follow-up emails in addition to those meetings. So a lot of work back and forth in a collaborative process to understand the situation we're in, to help the cities go through their process of understanding the Nadelson Dale Group study and what was being proposed. Some takeaways from that collaborative process. First and foremost, that the cities are responsible for providing fire services within their jurisdiction, and they largely understand that. That is their responsibility as an incorporated city. We are one way to do that. So contracting with Kern County Fire or having your own fire department or some other arrangement to provide municipal fire services, but ultimately that responsibility resides with the city. Everyone recognizes that the fire department has a revenue problem, that the issues here really are not an expenditure problem, although there is common understanding that pension costs are high. Nothing else has really been raised as an expenditure problem within the department at this point. The cities and the city's consultants agree that this is really a revenue problem that the department's got. That these current fire contracts are valued below the cost of providing services. There is no dispute in that. The cities consultant, Citygate, nor the cities have made any assertion that that is not an accurate statement. Everyone understands that the costs of providing these services exceed what the charges are according to the current contracts. And overall, the cities are happy with the services provided by the fire department. There haven't been any complaints with respect to service levels. They're very complimentary about responses and the services provided by the department. There's the understanding that the increased fire costs to the cities will put financial stress on them. That's been brought up several times by the cities. We understand that. We don't dispute that. That was considered ahead of time, and that was the reason that initially there was a 7-year phase-in period and a year of negotiations for these contracts leading into it, to allow time for budget adjustments, allow time for additional revenue generation mechanisms. But no one disputes that this additional cost would put financial stress on those cities. It's the same stress that the county has been experiencing for some time because of the shortfall or the inherent subsidy being provided in these incorporated jurisdictions. The existing county subsidy is diverting needs diverting needed resources from other county services. This is probably most notably pointed out this last June when your board approved a permanent shift in $4 million from the general fund to the fire fund. It was needed. That was part of a larger strategic move in order to help shore up the fire department financing, but it absolutely diverted those funds away from other general fund funded services such as sheriff services, libraries, parks, those types of items. There is a common interest in exploring additional fire revenue sources. So that's been brought up by the cities and the city's consultants and the county. And I think we're all very open to working on those things. Those are more long-term in nature to get things, revenue sources identified and approved, and recognizing that we're dealing with 9 different incorporated cities that all have their own legislative bodies, and they all have their own they'll all have their own take on what revenue measures would be appropriate within their jurisdiction. So it's difficult to try to make a universal effort like that because of the county plus 9 different cities. And there's a backlog of equipment and capital needs in the fire department. That's been well documented over the years, and the ongoing demand for equipment and facilities is there. That need exists both in the current period, and the backlog of those exists as well. And that comes back to the funding issue, and that this is a revenue problem. And again, these are all takeaways, kind of common understandings from this collaborative process, that there is a common desire to achieve the most efficient use of taxpayer money in delivering fire services countywide. Everyone agrees with that, and how we approach that and how we can do that collaboratively. Everyone wants the same outcome, to be the best stewards of taxpayers' money and being able to provide this service. And hopefully we can find ways to do that collaboratively in ways that are more efficient and ultimately save the taxpayers' money. There was not a more accurate or a preferable cost allocation formula identified. So we spent 130 days working with the cities and their consultant. And no more accurate or preferable cost allocation formula was brought to the table. In fact, there were comments that there wasn't one allocation formula that was better for collectively the city group. I will say both the Nadelson Dale Group and Citygate independently modeled a variety of different cost allocation models, and none were shown to be preferable to what is being proposed ultimately and recommended here today. The cities have stated that there is that they vary in their desire and ability to pay for these services. This is a complex because we are dealing with 9 different independent cities and city managers and elected officials there. And there just inherently is there's a varying level of desire and ability to pay. And I think we can understand that. But it's not one-on-one. It is, there is a whole group that we're working with. And finally, that there's no single cost allocation formula that works for all cities. The cities have come to us and said, after their work was done with Citygate, their consultant, they came back and said, look, there's not one cost allocation formula that they could recommend that would work for all of them. And so all of that kind of feeds into where we are today. And it's a backdrop and leading up to what is being recommended on how we move forward today as a city, or as a county rather. This may be helpful in better understanding the inherent subsidy that the county is providing to incorporated cities. We've talked about it. We looked at the 48% cost reimbursement according to the CPSM study. We looked at the 19% cost reimbursement on the Nadeau Dale Group study. But when we step back and we look at what per capita fire costs look like in Kern County, you can see inherently what this subsidy looks like. So this graph in front of you is the 2019-2020 budgeted per capita fire costs. So fire costs, including fire fund allocations, per capita by incorporated city in Kern County. And you can see the two, California City and the city of Bakersfield, are significantly higher because they have their own fire departments and they're paying the full cost of those departments. Everyone else, from Ridgecrest at $73.63 down to Maricopa at $30.23, are contract cities with Kern County Fire. And this is where you can see the difference between what those cities are paying for fire services right now, full Kern County Fire Department fire services, versus what those similar services are costing in the two cities in Kern County that have their own fire departments. I also included a California average. That's the actual per capita average across California between 2014 and 2018, $170.49. And it's just really as a benchmark to kind of gauge everything else off of. If you take a step back and we look at the next slide, this takes a step back and looks at the whole valley. So we're looking at, or the Southern Valley. So we're looking at Kern County, Fresno County, Kings County, and Tulare County. These are per capita fire costs, actual, this is as reported to the State Controller's Office, from 2014 to 2018. So it's an average of those 4 years, per capita fire costs. The green columns are the contract cities, contract in Kern County with Kern County Fire. They are clearly on the low end of all of the per capita fire costs shown on this slide. The red are volunteer fire departments. There are some cities here that still maintain volunteer fire departments. The yellow in Lindsay is they had a combined police fire staffing model where I guess the same employees serve both as police and fire. And I'm not sure how that operationally works, but that's what we found. And then the orange is a situation in Corcoran where they weren't primarily providing the fire service. So some alternative fire service delivery methods, but what this really shows is that the costs that the contract cities in Kern County are paying are comparable to those alternative fire service delivery models and significantly below all of those blue columns that show what the per capita cost is for other comparable jurisdictions, incorporated cities in the southern San Joaquin Valley. And finally, this last slide, this is a histogram, so it shows frequency. This is a measurement of 319 California cities over that same period of 2014 to 2018. And it is measuring, again, per capita fire costs, so fire cost per person. Each column is separated there in $25 increments. So the far left, where the top of that stack says 19, that is cities that pay less than $25 per person for fire service in their jurisdiction. Keep in mind that these 319 cities include all of those alternative service delivery methods. So you're going to include volunteer fire departments, we're including any combination fire departments, those types of things. And so there's 19 of those, and then on the far right are those cities that spend over $300 per person for fire services, and there's 36 of those. And that's how, and you can see the frequency distribution. Where our contract cities fall, Maricopa is in the far left column. Wasco, Tehachapi, Delano, Arvin, and Maricopa are in the $25 to $50 column. They're included in that count of 24. Taft, Ridgecrest, and Shafter are included in that count of 20 between the $50 and $75 per person cost for fire services. So what does it show? It shows that these cities that have full service Kern County Fire Department services are paying amongst the lowest for fire services in all incorporated cities throughout the state of California. And that really highlights the subsidy that's being provided by the county currently through the existing contract methodology. So moving forward, the path moving forward, the approach that's being recommended here today provides a clear path forward to full cost recovery for these fire service contracts, but also included some flexibility for us to work with cities where the methodology doesn't fit a specific situation. And we're aware of at least one where the TNDG study contract methodology doesn't fit a scenario in Taft in particular. Because of the oil fields and oil assets that are in the unincorporated area immediately surrounding Taft, and more of that cost should be borne by the county. So we are looking to preserve some flexibility to work with them and any other city that falls in a similar situation. This approach considers the financial impacts on contracted cities by what we're recommending now would avoid early termination of almost all of the contracts. And it would allow a significant amount of time, up to 8 years, for cities to ease into the transition of paying for the full costs for these services that have been rendered. So in detail, what the recommendation is that your board would approve the Nadelson Dale Group study and the cost allocation methodology inclusive of the following items. We would not terminate the 7 contracts with cities that expire June 30th, 2022. Those would be allowed to run their natural course, so no termination of those 7 contracts. The 1 contract that expires in 2032 would be provided a notice of termination to align them with the June 30th, 2022 date. And the 1 city that has a contract that expires December 31st, 2020 would also, that would actually be extended to also align with the June 30th, 2022 date. We would immediately start discussions with any city where there's a reason that the Nadelson Dale Group cost allocation doesn't fit their specific situation due to a unique circumstance. I briefly mentioned the situation we're aware of in Taft, and we're going to be working with the city of Taft on that situation. If there are similar types of issues in other cities, we would recommend working with them in order to address those as well. The county and cities would immediately begin negotiations on new fire service contract documents and language to both address the approach and the new methodology inclusive of those modifications that we discussed, but also to address any issues that the cities have in language that they'd like to see differently, or additional services or changes in scope that they would like to be included in that as well. The new contracts would include that Nadelson Dale Group cost allocation methodology, any specific modifications such as the ones we've discussed, with a maximum phase-in period of 6 years. So 6 years plus the 2022 deadline puts it roughly at 8 years between now and full implementation. And then that the county and the city start discussing immediately and explore and coordinate to the extent possible any additional fire related revenue options that can reduce the cost of these services for both the cities and the county. We're very interested in continuing to have those discussions and working with the cities. So this approach and why we need action, why action is being recommended now, This is one of the 62 recommendations that has been out there from the CPSM study. This has been a priority of your board and a priority of the department to get these implemented. Just as important, or maybe more importantly, this sets policy that the county is going to seek full cost recovery for these services. And that any current or future negotiations need to be based on full cost recovery. And that a consistent method for determining how those costs and charges are determined is set by the county. This is really important, and it's important that, and this is one of the things that really needs to have some urgency in being done now and not waiting until June 30th, 2022 to address, because we have 9 incorporated cities that are all independently negotiating. They have their independent city councils and mayors and city managers. We can't leave it up to each one of them to come back and try to negotiate with the county with what they think their allocation should be. It's been clear through this collaborative process that there's not one allocation methodology that's preferred by the cities, and there's not one approach that's preferred by the cities. That this needs to be driven by the county as the service provider. It is our department and our costs and the services we're providing. And if our policy is full cost recovery, we should be in the position of determining how that is counted and how those charges are determined. This provides clear advance notice to impacted cities. So the sooner the better as far as being able for them to plan and consider alternatives to their budget situations and alternative revenue mechanisms. So this would provide clear advance notice now. That in 2022, this would be the expectation for those contracts, and with a maximum phase-in period of 6 years. It aligns all of those contract renewal dates, so the same date, so it brings them all to focus on the June 30th, 2022 date. Importantly, this enables financial planning for the fire department and the CAO's office, because now we can look forward and understand and project what revenue streams are going to be coming into the department, how that goes to meet equipment and operational needs going forward. And really, this is a critical step, another critical step really in shoring up the financial stability of the county fire fund. This does not preclude, in fact, this allows ongoing discussions regarding contract needs that the cities may have and specific service level discussions. So it doesn't stop those discussions from happening. But taking action now does set the parameters of full cost recovery and the methodology and timeline for the county to get there. So with that, I am happy to take questions, but I know Chief Witt has some comments to make as well.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, members of the board. Thank you for this opportunity. I'd like to thank the CAO, the COO, Brent and Thomas for their tremendous amount of work on this project. It hasn't been easy. As we talked about, we have a revenue shortfall with the fire department. That revenue shortfall has been extremely hard on the fire department. With the contract imposition, we all know what we went through. It's extremely hard to staff the stations without forcing people to go in. I believe if we had contracts like we're talking about, the contracts that are equal to the services provided, that we wouldn't be where we are today. We wouldn't be where we are today with the impositions, with the number of force hires. I have a comparison chart of July 18th to October 30th of last year. In a 105-day period, we had 185 force hires. This year, during that same period, July 18th to October 30th, I have 1,087 force hires. That means 1,087 times our staff has made somebody come to work. That's not good. And with that, due to all these factors, such as all the vacancies that were created at the beginning of the year to meet budget guidelines, I decided to reduce the amount of funded positions. Reduce the amount of funded positions because it saves money. We saved millions of dollars. We will save millions of dollars by leaving positions open and working overtime to fill those positions. But there's a lot of things that have happened, and it's made it extremely hard on the men and women of the Kern County Fire Department. And I believe today I am behind this, I'm for this, and it needs to happen for everybody within the fire department. That it's going to be hard. It's hard for everybody, right now in the financial climate we're in. However, what the cities are paying is extremely low. The union president has wrote a letter in support of this item that's on file for some of the same reasons that I have, and that is we have a revenue issue. We need to fix this and move on, fix this and move on together. And I believe we can do it together. The meetings that we had just not too long ago that Mr. Surface talked about, we had, I think it was item number 5 that he mentioned, that the county would start discussions immediately and talk about issues like Taft had that were a little bit different, that maybe some of the consultants hadn't thought about, that we need to look into and address. And so there are significant revenue issues. There's a black cloud hanging over the fire department, and I'm asking for support today of the men and women of the fire department, the communities, and we will work with those cities. And I want to provide this same continuous service, the good service that the cities talk about throughout the county. But I'm concerned, about the amount of revenue going down, the workload of my firefighters, and just the overall health of our firefighters. I know the stress and the workload, the number of people that have, contemplated suicide or marriage difficulties has increased dramatically. And I think it's the environment we're in, but most importantly, I think it's where we're at as a department. And I ask for your vote today.
Chief, thank you. I think you do a great job. I'm a big fan of yours. And I hear the pain in your voice today as we have worked through complicated issues involving your department, the union, leadership, us. I don't envy you, but I appreciate you. So thank you for your presentation. This is an issue that is long overdue. It has plagued this board for as long as I've been here. Mick and I have been here 8 years together with this whole board. So that is not a short period of time. It has not come close to being resolved. And part of that, I believe, is an honest perception by outsiders that we have some pot of gold we're sitting on that we're not being honest about. And I wish that were true, Kathy. If you find it, come right to my office right away. So thank you. I'm going to ask if there are members of the public, Kathy, that would like to weigh in on this important and controversial issue. Ask our patience as we work through it.
Madam Chair, members of the board, Fire Chief Witt did mention the letter submitted by Dave Nelson from the Kern County Firefighters Union. You have a copy of that. We also received an email from Josh Bryant. He is a council member with the city of Taft. You have a copy of his email, just received this afternoon. And then we have 2 speakers on the line waiting to address your board. We're going to start with City of Taft Mayor Dave Knorr. Mayor Knorr, if you would, thank you so much for waiting all morning long. You were queued in Teams all morning. I saw your number. Now's your time to address the board. If you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, we would love to hear from you.
Hello.
Yes, sir.
You're on. We can hear you.
Well, okay. I want to thank Madam Chair and members of the board. I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to address you concerning this very critical issue, something that's it's going to take all of us working together to solve this problem. It's very disconcerting when I hear some of the things. There's an article in the newspaper this morning about this issue, cities rebelling in a long simmering battle and verbiage like that. When in point of fact, it is incumbent upon all of us, both governments, to see to it that this problem gets solved once and for all, for quality of life issues for everybody. And I'd like to go back just a little bit because they talk about the fact that the cities aren't paying their fair share. So if you'll bear with me, Kern County Fire's budget deficit first emerged in 2008, before many of us were working for the people. That was after property values tanked due to the Great Recession. That was 4 years before the city of Taft first contracted with Kern County Fire. Kern County Fire had some issues, and one of the reasons that they offered their services was they were hoping that the economy of scale would help solve those financial problems, and that made good sense. Then in fiscal year 2013-2014 budget, Kern County and the fire fund were both negatively impacted by a natural gas property tax refund. Very large negative impact. Kern County's general fund lost $7.3 million. The fire fund, $3.9 million. At the same time, employees' salaries and benefits costs rose substantially as a result of escalating pension obligation bond costs. That was to backfill a pension unfunded liability that was created long before Kern County contracted with any of the cities. Now, to begin with, how did we arrive by the contracts? Well, the pricing for the first 5-year contract was developed by Kern County and offered to the city. The city took a look at it, and we weighed it in open session. We thought that it was fair and equitable in the best interest of the people. So we said yes, we signed it, and we began our contract with Kern County. The people that work for Kern County Fire provided an exemplary service. I never heard any complaints about the level of service or the professionalism that was demonstrated by the employees, such that after the first 5 years, Kern County Fire came back to the city of Taft, having produced 5 years of historical data upon which to weigh and determine exactly what the cost for the second 5-year contract would be. And they proposed that contract. We signed that contract on April the 15th of 2017. And I want to read a part of that, and this is line number 36 of the agreement between Kern County and the city of Taft. And it says, whereas city and county had negotiated this agreement to replace all previous and amended agreements, now therefore it is mutually agreed by and between county and city as follows. And it spells out the contract. Well, we accepted that contract, and every time we got a bill from Kern County, we paid it. We paid it in its entirety, and we paid it on time. Now, in my mind, that's proper administration of contract. We paid our fair share the entire time we have contracted with Kern County based on the fair share as calculated by and proposed by Kern County. We were never at the table. We never asked for special cost considerations or a reduction. We thanked them vehemently for the quality of service and went forward. And then to read these things is quite disturbing. And then we looked at the methodology that was proposed. We never got called to the table and said, look, we've got a problem. We need to work on this together. We need to come to a consensus. We saw that it was on your consent calendar. And that methodology produced some very arbitrary, inconsistent results, and not just for the city of Taft, but others. When you're looking at per square mileage coverage costs of anywhere from $58,000 a square mile to $1,500,000 a square mile. Cost per occupied units amongst the 9 member cities, from $371 per occupied unit to $5,761 per occupied unit. What we requested was time to sit down with Kern County Fire, your consultant and ours, and come to an agreed upon, very clear cost delivery analysis. What is the cost basis to deliver fire service throughout the county? And then examine the specifics of each city, such that if there was a multiplier that needed to be applied because it was more expensive to provide that service, it could be done. Or if it was less because of some special circumstances, that could be done. But it is critical that the county and all the member cities agree to and are comfortable with that cost base. And what you have before you has not established that. Yeah, we've been working on it 130 days. Kern County worked on it for 2 years. Started 7 months after they signed a 5-year contract with us without talking to us. Worked on it for 2 years, so is it going to take more time? Indeed it will, but we owe it to the people, all of us, to finally come to a solution for this long term. So in that end, I appreciate the time you've given me. I want it to be clear that I do not accept the methodology that you are considering today. I don't see a real benefit because, as described by the CAO, there's a great deal of work to be done. We need to meet and talk, and we need to agree and support. We owe it to all the people that we represent, whether it's in the county or the city. I believe this is going to take a little time, but at least the language has begun and the discussion has begun. I appreciate your time, and I look forward to hear what you have to say about this.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Michael Turnipseed, Kern County Taxpayers Association. Mr. Turnipseed, if you would unmute your phone by pressing *6, you may address the board.
Thank you. Madam Chair, members of the board, Michael Turnipseed representing the Kern County Taxpayers Association. Dave Norrie is always a hard act to follow. But the bottom line, the gross number is every month that these contracts are allowed to go on, the county is losing about $850,000 a month. So the last 3.5 months, we have been going through this process. It's nearly $3 million that the county's never going to see again because the process needs to happen. And it's very tough to renegotiate contracts because the cities have acquired a standard of living based on an artificial contract that people negotiated, the fire department negotiated with these cities 10 years ago, if not longer, and more recent. And the fact was, I think the county really was very generous with the cities. Well, as the world's changing, we have to address the inequality. We cannot, the taxpayers of Kern County cannot continue to subsidize the cities. I think the charts that Mr. Service showed that the cost per residence is extremely low in these cities. And granted, the pension costs that we incurred, and none of you were on the board when those pension benefit costs were started back in the early 2000s, but we're stuck with that. And so it has to be addressed one way or the other. And if the cities don't want to pay you to provide the service that it costs, then let them pick a decision of going to volunteer fire departments or setting up their own fire department. But we have to stop this hemorrhaging, because it not only affects the fire department, it affects the libraries, it affects the parks, it affects every other general fund department that is having to subsidize the fire department because the county is subsidizing the 9 small cities. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck.
Mike, thank you for your input. I appreciate that. And your authentic care, good faith care for Kern County. Do we have anybody else?
No, Madam Chair, that concludes public comment on this item.
Okay, very good. We're going to close the public hearing. We're going to come back to the board for comments, question, and action. I want to say, I don't see anybody punched in yet, so I'll give them a minute. But Chief, I appreciate you moving forward on this issue. It's terribly painful and controversial for reasons that are not our fault, thankfully. We can rest assured that we are trying to fix something that needs to be fixed. And I know that's hard for some members of this board and members of the public. It's a very difficult issue, so thank you. Nobody likes this, I assure you that. You know better than anyone. So, gentlemen, can I have some direction from you? I certainly support this effort and support our chief. I'd like to hear from you all now, please. Not all at once, please.
I'd like to take a minute. I'd like to take a minute if I could.
Oh, Supervisor Couch, the floor is yours, and we can hear you just fine.
Okay, thank you. I probably need to direct my comments or questions to Mr. Zervis or Mr. Alsop so they can be ready to respond. I want to make sure that, and I'll go as quickly as I can. First of all, I want to direct some comments to thank Mayor Knorr for his comments and the other cities. I want to apologize to the cities for the way this was handled. I don't think it was handled, well, it wasn't handled the way that I thought it was going to be handled. And if it had been handled that way, I don't think we would have maybe some of the issues that we have right now. But we are where we are. But again, I want to say that I apologize for the way this was handled. Mr. Zervis, Mr. Alsop, the fire department revenues consists of, or maybe even the chief should be able to answer this, really consists of the fire fund portion of the property tax paid by every property owner in Kern County, whether they're inside a city or they're in an unincorporated area. It also, that's one revenue source number one. Number two would be the contract city's revenue, what they pay the county for fire protection, which is over and above the fire fund revenue that's generated in the property tax on that property in the city. And they have some small fee revenue. Those are probably the main three. Can you confirm that those are the main three, or are there others that I don't know about? Maybe you've got some CAL FIRE revenue also?
Yeah, so that'd be the main revenue sources, or the fire fund, contract cities, CAL FIRE's contract, as well as some permit fee revenue that we get.
Okay, thank you, Chief. What I said on, and I don't remember if it was June 30th or the July meeting, was this could be the greatest formula that's ever been devised. It's obviously not just to be used over every city in the county, because Mr. Zervis admits that it won't work. Doesn't make a lot of sense for Taft. I've been told that every city in the county can afford this, but then I was also told we're probably going to have to carve Maricopa and McFarland out. So I think we have about 1/3 of the cities that this doesn't work for one reason or another. But I have a question, and I don't know why I didn't think of this earlier. If this is a really good cost recovery or cost allocation formula, why don't we just treat Kern County's unincorporated areas as sort of a 10th contract city to determine what our general fund contribution ought to be to the fire department every year? Who'd like that one?
This is Ryan Alsop, Supervisor. I'll have to get back to you on that. I'm not prepared to answer that question today.
Well, I don't know that I want to stop right there, Ryan, because I got to believe that makes if what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If we think this is a good formula for every city, I don't understand why it wouldn't be a good formula for the unincorporated areas. It would seem to me it's the entire county. That would cover the entire county, and it would take into account the fire fund revenue and the property tax. It would take into account what the contract cities already pay or would be paying, and the fee revenue. So I don't know that I can just accept. You'll have to get back to me on that. I think I can vote for this. I can go along with this if we're going to treat ourselves the same way we treat all the other cities, the 9 contract cities.
Yeah, I think we will treat ourselves the same way we treat the 9 contract cities, Supervisor. The methodology.
Can we include that in here?
Pardon me?
Can we include that in that we will? You'd have to work on the wording, but I would like the unincorporated areas of Kern County for budgeting purposes to be considered similarly to the contract cities. I don't know what would be wrong with that.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I mean, I think that one thing we do know is that the residents of the unincorporated areas of Kern County are subsidizing currently these 9 incorporated cities for their fire services. But I think we apply this equally. This methodology, I just want to be clear that this is not some crazy, complicated formula. This is simply having a basis that makes sense for retrieving actual costs for services that are provided, making sure that when we are charging cities for services, part of what they're paying us takes care of maintenance. It takes care of purchases of new equipment.
I understand the whole rationale.
And it's just a baseline.
I think we need to treat ourselves the same that we're treating the contract cities. I think that would go a long way to repairing some of the damage maybe that we've done to the relationships with the contract cities. And I'm looking for a way to do that, but I'm not hearing any interest in that.
Well, I'm happy to come back and provide a report on that. I mean, unless Jim wants to, and let me just say, to address the damage that we've done to contract cities, I want to respectfully, Madam Chairwoman and members of the board, this was a recommendation in 2017 out of a board commission report on the fire department that was done. It was widely talked about, widely reported. We discussed all the recommendations. This is one of them. Nadelson Dale Group was hired. We've had conversations in public session along the way. This was something that we went about doing in what we thought was a very fair and responsible manner. We are not interfering with the city's contracts that are currently in place. We're allowing those contracts to end through 2022. Correct, we are not now. Correct.
So that was a 90-day period or 130, whatever it worked out. Apparently, there were a lot of things that came out of that short period of time in working with the cities that we did not have.
Well, the contract was one. We're also allowing McFarland, which your board has dealt with publicly on numerous occasions here. My first year here in my position, I remember that your board had put that city on notice regarding the payment for fire services. This is extending, giving them a 2-year extension. And then we're providing 6 years after that. So following the 2 years of contracts, 6 years after that, 2 presidential terms. To help get things squared away, to apply this methodology. We're going to work with them along the way. We're going to take into account special circumstances that exist in Taft and other areas. But this is something that we want to endeavor on talking with them about for the next 2 years. And once those contracts are up and they're done, we finish our negotiations with them and finish our discussions. Those contracts come back before your board, for your board to take each individual contract up as it comes for an up or down vote at that time.
I have an issue with not saying that we'll treat ourselves the same way in this document. And yes, it was a recommendation from the Nadelson Dale Group, or from the group that did we came up with the 60+ recommendations. But my issue is with the way this was done. And Jim Zervis mentioned it a little bit, but we should have gone to the cities in the first place and talked with them about this in a much different manner than we did. And that's what I would like to apologize to them for. That's all, Madam Chair.
Thanks, David. Are you done, David? Okay. Thank you.
Yes, for now.
Thank you. Ryan, do you want to jump in right now, or are we going to, I see Supervisor Gleason has punched in. We'll go to Supervisor Gleason. That sounds like a good idea right now.
Appreciate it. Thanks. Appreciate it. Thanks. Supervisor Couch, I was going to talk about that a little bit, what you said about fair share. And the way I was going to couch, I think what Supervisor Couch was saying is that having a review of our fire fund and how those numbers are tabulated may answer his concerns. I don't know, but I was going to talk about it only because the city manager that I talked to also offered that. But I didn't want to start there. I wanted to start off first by saying how thankful I am. Is the fire season over, Chief?
Well, we continue to be in a year-round fire season. Even if there's snow on the ground in the high country, it melts quick. You get a few days of hot
You
weather.
guys have done a phenomenal job this year, above and beyond any year that I've been here, in how the fire department has responded to the needs of the people in Kern County.
Thank you. I know the men and women of the Kern County Fire Department appreciate that.
Remarkable. And I'm not alone when I say that. And I speak for thousands, hundreds of thousands of people thanking you and your team for what you do. A couple things I want. Now Dave's got me all off kilter here. I am supportive of what we're doing. I think our team, our fire department, has been undervalued financially by these communities. And when I talk to people in Ridgecrest, specifically when I talk to the mayor and I talk to the city manager, they both agree with me. They don't argue with it. They think that I'm sure you've had many conversations with Ron Strand, Manager Strand, and he agrees. I mean, he's not pushing, that he wants to not pay. He wants to. What he says to me is that he doesn't want another short-term fix that Mayor Noor talked about. He mentioned that we've done this time and time again. We keep doing it, and we put a Band-Aid on it for a couple of years, and then kaboom, in 2 or 3 years or 5 years down the road, it's worse. So what Manager Strand is suggesting to me is, as we move forward with this deal, that we try to solve the problem. And how we get there is if we can all take a piece of that responsibility in getting to that solution, he's in support of that. But I also agreed with your final statement, Mr. Zervis, is that this is our fire department. This is our service. We're going to determine the rates. If they want to pay, great. If they don't, find some other way. So I don't like the way that sounds, certainly, but in the end, that we're accommodating county. Our job is servicing the county and all the disciplines of our county, not just our fire department. And having a $4 million give every year to the fire department isn't helping us, and being shortchanged or being underpaid by these studies that show $10 million. That's a significant chunk of change we have to figure out. So my experience with the cities is that they want to pay. They understand the issue. They want to continue negotiations. I think they're fair when they say that each city is different, unique, and has aspects to their contract that they would like to have. I know the city of Ridgecrest has unique circumstances to Delano or Taft, and they have to be negotiated with, and every contract may have the same term, it may start at the same point, but they have peculiarities. One of those peculiarities is my house, for example. Ron Strand brings up, he says, Mick, where you live, I live in the county. I don't live in the city. But across the street from me is the city. So the way we're setting up this contract, it may be that I would get my fire services at a different rate than the guy across the street from me would get his services. Is that correct?
Supervisor Gleason, through the chair, actually, it's the opposite. So currently,
yeah, I know what it's currently.
So currently,
you
pay more than they pay for fire services,
right.
And we're trying to bridge that gap and get those closer together.
So we're trying to get those. So at the end of the day, he's not going to be able to say to me that the city is paying more for my fire services than I'm paying for my fire services.
Correct.
I think that's what Supervisor Couch was also trying to get to as a fair share of how we get this, and I'm glad we're having that conversation. I am in support. I'm in support, Chief, of you personally and what you bring to the table, and I'm also in support of your team. And I also recognize that the contracts we have now are just not done properly. And I apologize to all of Kern County for not being aware that these contracts were not fairly laid out in front of this board for so many years, and I take a hit on that. I would also like to talk to you, Chief, offline about your comment earlier about social issues you're having within your department. that is a red flag for me, and we need to give you everything we can in terms of support of your firefighters. So bottom line is I'm going to support this effort, and thank you, Madam Chair.
Mick, I really appreciate that, and thank you for letting us know where you are. Chief, you're getting closer and closer to resolving a decades-long issue, so I appreciate that. Mick, thank you. I don't see anyone plugged in yet. After Supervisor Gleason, I do have the two colleagues to my left who I would appreciate hearing from, but I don't want to jam you up. Mick, Supervisor Maggard, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ms. Kraus, that you had to manage my microphone for me. I apologize for that. Thank you, everyone. And I thank you, Chief, for your update. I want to recognize that, maybe it's slightly different than Supervisor Gleason just did, but I too am grateful for the extraordinary service that we receive from the fire department and the absolute life or death difference it makes when you call 911 and they show up. If the personnel of the fire department were machines and we push them revved to the limit long enough, they break and we fix a machine and go forward. But our firefighters are not machines. They are human beings and they have consequences. And I want to, it isn't just a budget issue. I recognize fully that there are human consequences and we need to fix those consequences. So solving this is paramount for that to occur. I also recognize we cannot wait with all of the years that it will transpire before we are fully reimbursed for the cost of providing these services. We cannot wait that long to fix the problems that affect the personnel that work for us. So something has to intervene sooner than that. So with that being said, and as much as I respect as I have for those, who was it that said, was it Mr. Turnus that said it's very hard to follow Mayor Knorr? He's been compelling every time I've ever heard him talk. He is a compelling guy, and he makes many valid points. But as difficult as it is, we have to find a solution, and if that means that those cities have to find their own solutions without us, then that's the case. I hope we can give them the opportunity to gear up and be ready to do that. But with all that said, I too will support the recommendation. But I have one more remark to make, and that is that the issue about whether or not the county is being treated the same as the contract cities, I want to come to that issue for one moment. It is my understanding that the airport, Meadows Field, receives fire services from a county fire station, and that station is pretty much entirely committed to serve on site. They don't go anywhere else. Is that true, Chief?
Madam Chairwoman, members of the board, yes, that is correct. That is right now the airport. Those two people that are at that fire station, they are committed. They cannot leave the airport. They can only serve the airport under federal rules that they have to be on the airport. And so most definitely they are committed to only serving that airport.
So do we operate that, what station do we call that? What number is that one?
That is Station 62.
Station 62. Is Station 62 operated at break even? Are we fully reimbursed for those costs, or is there a deficit ongoing?
No, I have received no revenue from the airport for our services. So, the value there is about $1.5 million, sir.
So I do think, I didn't understand all the implications of what Supervisor Couch was asking, but it piqued my ear, that's why I'm mentioning this today, that we do expect the fire department to be made whole by the cities that they serve. I also think that the fire department should be made whole by the departments of the county that they serve. And if we must supplement the budget of some department to fully deliver services, we should supplement the department that is the cause of incurring those services. And in this case, I think that is the airport. It is not the fire department. The fire department is the service supplier, and the one who's consuming the service is the airport. So we need to move towards having that solved. And if that means we have to shift the supplement from the fire department to the airport, the fire department should be compensated. So, and also I'm just a plain old accountant. I've said this like 10 times today. You show expenses broad. That means you the expense and the revenue is related to that which is causing it and consuming it, and not netting it out somewhere else. So I just want my colleagues to hear me today say that I'm eager to solve that as quickly as possible, because we have other issues with the fire department. For example, whether or not we might need to have a second academy, so that we are not continually calling these people back and risking breaking the tremendous resource that we have in our firefighters.
Thank you for your comments and concern. I know the men and women of the fire department appreciate that, and I appreciate that.
Mr. Zervis, I think you wanted to respond.
Yeah, thank you, Supervisor Maggard.
Through the chair.
That's a good point that you raise regarding the airport, and the fact that the airport doesn't have enough revenue to support the fire department payment that you're referring to, so that would come from the county's general fund for reimbursement. But it doesn't take away from your point in that the person consuming the service should be the ones responsible for paying for it.
Spoken like a true CPA, as is Mr. Service as well.
And I was silent, really thinking about Supervisor Couch's comments along the same lines, and it gets complex. I mean, the cost allocation methodology and contracts we've been talking about have been primarily focused on external users. When we look at internal users, it just gets more complicated. Not that it doesn't mean it's right. We still need to just consider all the factors, such as the airport. Additionally, we have to think about the general fund, existing general fund subsidies of property tax base that's been shifted in perpetuity into the fire fund. Similar to an ongoing contract payment that's been made forever. $4 million this year. I believe it was $16 million, some years ago. There's $20 million of effectively contract revenue that the county general fund is contributing on an annual basis to support the fire department. Or, later on today, you're going to be considering a $10 million injection from the general fund into equipment for the fire department. So there's already a lot of financial overlap between the general fund and the fire department. I don't disagree with your statement or Supervisor Couch's statement. We just need to be able to consider all of these factors and financial overlap when talking about, well, what is that net cost back to the general fund or surplus, because presumably if there's a $10 million gap in the fire fund today, and that's because the cities aren't paying their full cost of service, and that budget is balanced, that money is coming from somewhere, and the only other place for it to come from is from the county. So I think we just need to be able to some time to analyze that issue a little further, and I guess that's my comments on there. But recognize that there are ongoing support. There is and will be ongoing support for the fire department, for the fire fund rather, from the general fund.
And I appreciate your willingness to consider that. I'll look forward to this issue coming back to us. But one of the consequences of the way we've treated it so far, which is to kind of allow the deficit to be eaten, so to speak, by the fire department, is that the resources of the fire department, which include our personnel, are having to eat the consequence of that. Yeah. And that is an unfair application of that cost, so to use accounting speak again. So I hope we can bring that back much sooner than later and resolve that so that we can move on and solve the other issues we have in our fire department. Thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. Supervisor Scrivener.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Want to start first of all just by acknowledging that the rollout of this wasn't done in a way in which the cities reacted very well, to put it mildly, as far as this item coming on the agenda, I think about 3 months ago or so, 3 or 4 months ago originally. But in regard to that, the board said, okay, well, let's pump the brakes. Let's go and meet with the cities, et cetera, if we adopt a methodology, and then say, we're going to adopt a methodology, and now we're going to talk to you about that methodology. To me, that's in reverse. We should have done that ahead of time. But that's, at this point, that's neither here nor there, and I think we acknowledge that. And so for the cities to take the posture that they took originally on this, I think was understandable. I think, they said, hey, and Mayor Noor reflected this, you told us what you wanted to charge for the cost of service, we signed a contract, and now you're saying you want to cancel the contract because we're not paying you enough, but you were the one that told us how much we had to pay. And so, and that's completely valid. And so I think that the first question to answer is, if we believe through our new methodology that these costs were so, that they're paying were so low and compared to the services rendered, why chief, why CAO, what's our explanation for why we offered these contracts originally at that lower rate? I know we had two studies before you answer. I know we had two studies. We had one done in 18, and that was done by a firm that specialized in fire service. That's what they did. I mean, it's a firm I think it's still ran by a former fire chief, but I know they have a lot of former fire personnel that are there. And then we had a second firm that looked at our methodology a couple of years, about 2.5 years later, that identified the same thing, that we're not charging enough for the services rendered to these contract cities. But back to the original question, why were these contracts offered so low in the first place? Who was determining the cost for the service that we were providing, and why is it so different now?
I would start with service levels, and I would say that for surge capacity, we know that on the Erskine fire, we had all of our fire stations were committed except for 2 fire engines that were covering Kern County out of 47 fire stations. And so I would say economy of scale, there was some of that, the more engines we had, the more we could cover certain places. Operational efficiency, when you have more people on the same team and they're thinking the same way and they're going to fires in a similar manner, it's easier operationally. But financially speaking, I think, I can't comment for 20 years ago, but I do believe that financially, maybe it wasn't as big of a concern for fire chiefs, more service levels, more service driven than financially driven.
Okay.
And I think as time has gone on, we're trending the other way.
And I would also point out that your costs of personnel have gone up tremendously over the course of even the last 10 years. And I don't know who from CAO might have a ballpark figure for this, but I think that it's been driven largely by the benefit costs. The pension costs are one, healthcare costs are another, but that's something that government is seeing in every department, whether it's fire or it's law enforcement, or if it's even in non-safety sectors. The costs for labor are going up, largely due to the increases in retirement benefits that were given in the early 2000s, but just the cost of doing business has gone up for us over time. Yes. Any comment on that, CAO? Otherwise, as far as why we're looking at going from about 4.2 million a year from contract cities to around 14.5?
So Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair, I can comment on that. The prior contracts, it really comes to the issue of methodology. So the original contracts use a prior year actual cost basis, and then they have an escalator of, I believe, 2% or 2.1% every year for the 5-year period, and then it resets at the contract renewal to prior year actuals, and that goes again. So that cycle went twice that I'm aware of. And so the issue of actual costs escalating faster than the CPI adjustment through the contract, that's a real issue, but it got corrected at year 5. Now it's still a couple years old, but it did catch up. It didn't compound for 10 years. It really comes into the base allocation of costs, and the way the original contracts were developed, they looked at a per capita county-wide cost of fire service, so cost of fire service for everyone, and then they applied that to the population of incorporated city. That part is fine, but then it took it another step, and it discounted that based on a ratio of fire on-duty fire personnel, like in the incorporated cities, versus total fire personnel within the county. So it effectively had a double discount in the way that allocation, the way that formula was put together. I don't know why it was put together that way.
You just got here.
Well, no, in fact, I was
you
with
were on the
one
other
of the
end.
cities, and
Yeah,
we
you
were
were there.
happy to sign it at the time because it was a good deal. But it was the big effort, from my standpoint back then, the big effort was from the county, that we saw from the county standpoint, is getting the cities to start paying it all. Because prior to that, the cities weren't paying the contracts at all. They were only contributing the fire fund. So it was a big step forward for the county to even start to have contracts and collect anything. That was a big step forward. And so I can't speak to why that methodology occurred. It's not because of the costs between then and now have escalated so much. It really is because, the methodology has changed and costs have increased, but primarily methodology has changed. And this is an allocation based on incident rates for the responding fire stations.
Okay, so combination.
Yeah.
Okay, very good. I thought that was an interesting question that Supervisor Couch posed as far as, what are the what's the unincorporated county paying, or were they going to be held to the same standard? And by my calculations, back in, 2012, we shifted, I think, $18.3 million from the general fund into the fire fund. We got a little bit of a benefit, or a large benefit, I guess, from the ERAF shift there. We just did, another 3 this year? 4? I know it's 4 to them, but it's 3 to us.
3.
Okay, 3.5. Okay, we'll call it 3.5 million.
Yep.
So, so we're up over 21 million. And does that account for the roughly 6.5 million out of the general fund that we have been giving the fire department for the last couple of years? Or can you subtract that 3.5 from the 6.5? Where's Elsa?
That would be,
Martinez,
that's going to be that's on top. That's on top.
It's on top of, okay,
That's on
thank you.
top of the shift in base.
Okay, so
fire.
it's on top of the shift, so it's another 6.5 that we're still,
Correct.
that we're still contributing roughly. And so 21, so around 27 million, just roughly, I'm thinking right now, general fund contribution over and above the fire fund. Well, I haven't got to the equipment yet.
Yes.
Okay, so that's basically where, so 27, so we're looking contract cities about 14.5 million after we ramp up over a 7-year period of time, and the county sitting somewhere around roughly 27 million. Plus now, in a few minutes, we're going to be talking about a $10 million infusion of cash to the fire department for them to purchase equipment. I think half of that is a straight general fund contribution, and the other 5 million is a financing. Debt service paid out of the general, comes out of the general fund.
That's correct.
But it will be financed. So
Yep.
there's a lot of money that's coming out of the general fund that goes to the fire department over and above the fire fund is my point. And so, the county general fund is contributing a tremendous amount. One of the things that, when we started this discussion with the cities, in addition to the methodology, was the fact that there were existing contracts that were on the books, and why don't we, rather than canceling the contracts and starting that 12-month clock for them to figure out, either negotiate a new rate or go out and find a way to provide fire service on your own. Several of the cities, when we met with Tehachapi and Taft, one of the things that they asked for was, just let the contracts run their course. And so that's one big concession that I think that the CAO's office is bringing to the board today, which is we will let those contracts expire in their normal term, June 30th, 2022, rather than cancel them now and start that 12-month clock. And so I appreciate the CAO coming to us with that concession, which I think is a big consideration. When we met with the cities of Taft and Tehachapi, and the reason I wanted to meet with them, with CAO, those are the two incorporated cities in my district that don't have their own fire department already. I have part of Bakersfield, I have California City, but they have their own fire departments. I want to say that through the course of that meeting, I think that there was a genuine understanding of the revenue shortfall that the fire department is facing. We talked a lot about the things that we had done in the fire department to try and cut costs where we could. But really where we are right now, in my view, is it's either we start cutting service levels significantly, reducing staffing in stations, browning out stations, closing stations, or we continue to take more money away from other county general fund departments and give it to the fire department in order for them to be able to maintain their current levels of service. Would you agree with that? Chief, do you agree with that?
Yes.
That you've done everything that you can to reduce costs, and now you're talking about removing station staffing, closing stations, et cetera?
Without a doubt, we've done everything we can financially. We've hit rock bottom where we are, and the next step would be service levels.
And for years, the fire department has been deferring equipment purchases in order to keep those service levels intact with staffing, et cetera.
Yes, we're close to $60 million behind in fire equipment.
If we approve these three items that are coming before us in a few minutes, then we'll knock 10 million off that 60, right? Roughly?
Yes, we will be moving that number down in the right direction.
Right. The other thing that I got out of that meeting with the cities of Taft and Tehachapi, and I appreciate both Mayor Knorr and Mayor Smith from Tehachapi for attending that, along with the two city managers and their staff, was a genuine desire to work collaboratively with us. I mean, they want to be partners. They want to be a part of the solution, but increasing the cost to them would require them to make difficult choices about spending more money on fire and taking it away from roads, from law enforcement, et cetera. One of the things I pointed out in that meeting is that's what we on this board have been grappling with. It seems like ever since I got here, but it's at least for the last 8 years that you folks have been here, you and Couch and Gleason, Madam Chair. We have been having to make those choices each and every budget year. A lot of it is to help maintain the fire department. Of course, oil had a big part to play in that when oil prices went down. We had Kern Medical for a while. Now it's COVID that's hit our budget. But each and every time, in order to maintain those service levels to those cities and to the unincorporated areas of the county for the fire department, we've been taking from other county departments. We were able to spare law enforcement, sheriff's department this year and last year, but we've had years where we couldn't do that, where we didn't do that. And so this problem is something that the county has been dealing with for many, many years. And I do think that it's imperative for us, as this board, our fiduciary duty to the county, to require that our fire department is reimbursed fairly for the services they render to the contract cities. But the question is, how do we get there? And I think that is going to be an ongoing conversation that we're going to need to have for them. I'm going to support staff's recommendation, but I want to make sure it's clear that methodology, in my mind, will come with modifications. It is not set in stone. It's something that we can continue to work with the cities in order to adjust, figure out what levels of service they are interested in seeing. When you have examples like Taft, where we have an engine that's there that serves largely the oil fields and the surrounding areas, that shouldn't be on the city. That should be something that we deal with. And so that's an example of how staff has recommended that with this new proposal that we have today, that there will be considerations and adjustments made for particular circumstances within the cities. I think that concludes my remarks that I have, but I want to make sure that as we move forward with the cities, that it is in the spirit of collaboration and partnership, that I'm not looking to dictate to them, bearing in mind that we need to make sure that we're being reimbursed for the services that are being rendered. But at the same time, I think that tone and tact makes a big difference when you're dealing with people and you're maintaining relationships and partnerships. And I feel like the cities, they want to be a part of the solution, and we just need to work together and figure out how it is that we're going to get there. But clearly, it's not going to continue to work for the county's general fund to subsidize service, not only not only in the incorporated cities, but just the fire department's needs in general. Our other departments, I think, are at a breaking point when it comes to continued cuts, and we're going to be right back at it here pretty soon, dealing with, I think, about a $14 million shortfall that the COVID shutdown has caused, and we're going to have to spread the pain again. So that's why I think it's important that we do something here now to start addressing the revenue shortfalls of the fire department. And this isn't something that we're doing overnight. We're not saying, hey, we need $10 million and we need it today. This is a 7-year phase-in addition to the, year and a half that's still existing on those contracts that expire in June 30, 2022. So this is spread out over an 8-year plus period of time. And so I think that that's an important thing for the public to bear in mind. We're not looking to make this all up in a year or 2 years. This is going to be a process. And so the cities are going to have, frankly, a lot more time than we had to adjust to the crash in oil and some of the other financial problems that we've had to deal with over the years. I'm not trying to diminish the impact on them. I'm just saying that this board has been dealing with making painful cuts for a long time, and I think it's time for us to start fixing the revenue shortfall in the fire department. Madam Chair, thank you.
Wow. Zach, thank you. You really are quite brilliant at these matters, and that was extremely helpful, fair, and thorough for the public. So thank you very much. Chief, it looks like this conversation is a fruitful one, and one in which you have some flexibility to deal with your cities in this new chapter. Certainly, we know these documents are living and open to modification because human beings change, leaderships change, economy changes. You understand that we're with you and want to see these things work, but that we are simply not able to do so under the current structure. So I like the spirit of civility and tone Supervisor Scrivener alluded to, and you have lots of support from this board, obviously. Do you want to add anything else?
No, we appreciate the support. We want to head in the right direction. I hear you loud and clear. Working together as a team is very important.
Absolutely.
And we need to do that. But getting started is very important too. And getting started in that direction and getting started together. And I have high confidence that the COO, Mr. Zerfus, and myself, making rounds throughout the cities, will be able to make some accomplishments and get headed in the right direction.
Appreciate that, Chief. I understand Supervisor Couch would like to weigh in. David, are you there?
I just wanted to quickly say I appreciate Zach's comments, especially about the modifications going forward. And Chief, as you have your conversations, I'd like to be updated on those. There's 5 of the 9 cities in the 4th district, so I'm very interested in this. Thank you.
Yeah. Big issue for you, David, for sure. Thank you. Mick, did you I believe you made a motion?
No, I'm about to.
Okay, please.
Motion on staff's recommendation.
See my crystal ball here. Very good. Gentlemen, a second, please.
Maggard seconds.
Thank you, Supervisor Maggard. We have a motion and a second, and we need to do a roll call vote.
Supervisor Gleason?
Yes.
Supervisor Scrivener?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard?
Aye.
Supervisor Couch?
Yes.
Supervisor Perez?
Yes, thank you. How exciting. Thank you, Chief. Really appreciate your leadership, and Zervis, you're invaluable to this family. Really, thank you. Consummate professional and simply brilliant. To all the folks waiting here for the ITS issue, you're going to like me even less right now than you already did, but I'm not going to take this matter up today, and I apologize to you. I think we have some really critical issues to work through. It's been a very long day. This is a long, complicated issue, and I'm going to ask my colleagues to indulge me while we still have other matters here on the agenda. This one is going to require our full brain power, and we're definitely at the end of that today. So if my colleagues would indulge me on that, I would like to address that issue. We can do the actual continuance later, but I wanted to let folks know in case they're sticking around for that matter. Okay, so we're going to move on. Items number 29 and 30 also include the fire department, Chief Witt again, and I understand we're going to hear them concurrently but vote on them separately. We'll see you guys next week. We'll continue it later. And we'll continue our conversations, of course, more importantly.
To continue to next week.
We'll continue it today. You want to just do that now, Mike?
No, I mean, do we have to have a vote to continue it like we did it this morning?
Yeah, we'll do it later, after we get
Oh,
through
we'll
these.
do the vote later, okay.
Yes, sorry about that, I wasn't
I
clear.
apologize. Didn't mean to step
Well, thank you
in.
for trying to help, I appreciate that. Okay, we have two matters with the fire department, items 29 and 30. We're ready to hear them succinctly, we hope. Just kidding.
Yes,
We need to hear everything.
rapidly go about this. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman
No,
and
don't leave
members of the
anything out,
board.
Chief, you know.
First, I would just like to say, I talked about being close to $60 million behind in fire apparatus and equipment, and it's a very proud moment to me that we have the opportunity to start chipping away at that, and we're talking about $10 million, so it is significant. It is significant, and I've been working together with my analyst and others to come up with ideas to make sure that we can do this every year. And I hear great things and great things coming our way. First, I'd like to talk about two dozers, our bulldozers we use in wildland fire environment, a very critical component, especially on grass fires. Two additional dozers. They're going to replace a 1978 dozer and a 1980 dozer. And of course, the safety of our men is vital and the most important thing. And so that's a very good thing. And so today, I'm asking to approve the purchase of two bulldozers for sole source procurement of two Caterpillar bulldozers. And the next item, a number of pieces of equipment. The purchase of, we're asking to transfer money, and a dozer transport 1, dozer trailer 1, bulldozer 1. And so as you can see, we're going to have two new setups for the bulldozers. They're going to have a dozer, a transport, and a trailer. Two additional fire engines that you see, the regular Type 1 fire engines that you see in the city, our bigger fire engine, 10 battalion chief vehicles, and 5 Type 3 engines. Those are our wildland engines that are a little bit bigger than the small, what we would call a patrol, a smaller engine. And so altogether, this is one of the most significant purchases that we have made in close to a decade. And so today, we're asking support on both items to continue to work through this process and take care of a huge issue in safety for the men and women of the Kern County Fire Department, as well as performance and service to our community, that we're not breaking down en route to calls, that we have the right equipment to do the job. We've all been in situations to where we talk about equipment, having the right equipment to get people out of their vehicles when they're trapped in a vehicle, when they're having a medical emergency or a fire in their house. We want the latest and greatest, and because time does matter. And but along the lines of latest and greatest, we have downsized. We have looked at all these items together with my analysts, together with internal committees with the fire department that got together and came up with ideas to reduce costs across the board with our wildland engines, our city engines, and our patrols. We're building our patrols now in-house with a Douglas bed. And so I'm really proud of the men and women of the Kern County Fire Department, and thank you for this opportunity. And we're asking that the board approve the cancellation of designations in the fire fund of $5 million, authorize mid-year capital asset for the purchase and replacement of apparatus, and authorize the auditor controller to process the specified budgetary adjustments and according transactions. Thank you.
Okay, Kathy?
We have no public comment on items 29 or 30.
Okay, excellent. And not seeing interest in my colleagues to address these issues at the moment, I would ask for a motion on 29.
Move approval.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Would you please call the roll?
I'll call the vote. Supervisor Gleason?
Aye.
Supervisor Scribner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard? Supervisor Couch?
Yes, and this item couldn't have been placed on the agenda at a worse time.
What do you mean, David?
After the discussion we just had.
Oh. Well, that's life sometimes.
Never mind. Bad joke.
Well, I
Supervi-
appreciate it.
Supervisor Perez.
Yes, please. Thank you.
All ayes.
Well,
Thank you.
next
We also- Oh,
Next item.
my
No,
apologies.
just next item. Next item.
On item 30? Got it. Okay. So we're done with 29. We have heard the presentation regarding 30, but we are doing a separate vote. Mr. Alsop, the floor is yours.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to, just a couple of things. Did you not vote on the other two items? Sorry.
So you wanted to get to 31, Ryan? Got it. So as to item number 30, gentlemen, can I please have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Again, we heard that presentation concurrently, but we're voting separately. We just did 29, we're doing 30 now. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Supervisor Gleason?
Yes.
Supervisor Scrivener?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard? Supervisor Couch?
Yes.
Supervisor Perez?
Yes,
All
thank you.
ayes.
Thank you very much. 31 will be our last item today because we're going to continue 32. Mr. Alsop, regarding 31, your thoughts?
Thank you, Madam Chair. It's been a long day, sorry.
Sure has.
Before Mr. Curry speaks, this is just a couple of comments. This is a cleanup item related to the two items that the chief already spoke about, and Brent's going to speak and close the door officially on this, but I did want to say that those two items represent your board's commitment to the Kern County Fire Department. The chief has some real issues. He's got equipment needs. This $10 million is needed, to address a $60 million problem that he's got, and then an ongoing problem after that. That is created, it's a revenue problem for the Kern County Fire Department that we need to fix. The most recent discussion that we just had was part of that overall plan. But this is money paying for this new equipment that's coming out of the general fund, that your board is contributing from the general fund to the fire fund to make this happen. So I wanted to point that out and ask Mr. Curry to finish. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Chair, members of the board, the item before you today is a proposed resolution approving lease financing of public safety vehicles with Bank of America Public Capital Corporation for sheriff's patrol vehicles and fire trucks. This recommendation represents your board's commitment to ensuring that public safety remains a priority here in the county. The proposed resolution before you today includes the addition of a fourth and fifth schedule of property to our existing agreement with Bank of America, and will add 65 sheriff's patrol vehicles and 6 fire trucks. The total cost of the sheriff's vehicles is not to exceed $4.5 million, and the total cost of the fire trucks is not to exceed $4.5 million, for a combined total cost not to exceed $9 million. The funding for the initial lease payments was approved by your board as part of the adopted fiscal year 2020-2021 budget. The term of the financing for the sheriff's vehicles is 5 years at a fixed rate of 0.9305%, resulting in 10 semi-annual payments of $459,457.48, and payments through maturity total $4,594,574.80. Total interest over the term of the financing is $94,574.80. The term of the financing for the fire department's equipment is 10 years at a fixed rate of 1.2714%, resulting in 20 semi-annual payments of $238,801.64, and payments through maturity total $4,776,032.80. Total interest over the term of the financing is $276,032.80. And therefore, it is recommended that your board approve and adopt the attached resolution approving the lease financing of public safety vehicles with Bank of America Public Capital Corporation, and authorize the chairman to sign all related financing documents. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much. Kathy, do we have public comment?
We do not.
Okay, shocking, such a riveting matter. Really, thank you. These are things are beyond my expertise by a long shot, so I didn't mean to make light of it. We appreciate you. It's just so important. Thank you. Gentlemen, anything from you, colleagues?
Move approval, Madam Chair.
We have a motion.
Second the motion, and congratulations on those outstanding interest rates.
But
Said the
somebody's
accountant.
excited. Very good, thank you, Mike. So we have a motion, a second, and we need a roll call vote.
Supervisor Gleason?
Yes.
Supervisor Scribner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard? Supervisor Couch?
Yes.
Supervisor Perez?
Here.
All ayes.
Excuse me, yes. Oh, it's a long day. I am also here, though, so that was a true statement. Thank you, the motion carries. Thank you, Chief. I think we're getting closer and closer to where we want to be, and your leadership is so critical to that. Thank you, really. Service, hats off to our county family and staff. Thank you so much. Please, guys, wear a mask. I know it sucks. Please, let's get out of this mess we're in by being smart and safe and being better about where we're at. We do need to continue 32. Gentlemen, if I get a quick motion, please, to next week. We will address that issue thoroughly next week.
So moved. Second.
Motion and a second. Please, Kathy, if you don't mind.
Supervisor Gleason? Supervisor Scribner?
Aye.
Supervisor Maggard?
Aye.
Supervisor Couch?
Yes.
Supervisor Perez?
Yes, we will adjourn to next week, November 17th. We will see you then. Mick, thank you for the motion to adjourn.